Hey, FlimsyLunchTray here, and welcome back to our Veteran Player Guide series for Part 5, where it's going to be this week and next week a continuation of the battle thought process. We did Shimakaze previously, and then now you're going to be seeing cruisers, and then next week a battleship. So, starting off here in domination mode, my thought process in talking about cruisers in general, I'm going to kind of overgeneralize or just generalize cruisers in the game here in World of Warships, as this is going to, of course, follow high tier, and as well as getting into the mid tier and low tier as well. So typically with your cruisers is that you want to play around key objective areas, like particularly capture zones, flanks, even if, for example, like let's say this was just like a standard battle with the enemy team having a cap in their spawn and we have a cap in our spawn, like playing flanks, key corridors. Usually what you have for cruisers in World of Warships, besides a few, you don't have the longest main battery gun range. So some of them like Salem here or like a Des Moines, if you push yourself all the way over to the 110 line, you're kind of really decreasing the value of your influence in the battle and reach. So here I'm moving right now to C, and I'm kind of wondering, I might actually dip in here to B, and you're going to see me using the airstrike depth charge airstrike, and I've been looking around at the map, kind of seeing how I can utilize the island to the left here. There's this pillar, and then you can actually even get shots to the left of that little peak that you see right there. And this is only a 1 submarine and 1 destroyer game. And then we have, of course, they have a hybrid. We're going to deal a lot with him, as well as the enemy Yorktown, a tier 8 CV. Side to side, I'm going to go ahead and come up here and sit. Now, one of the things that influences a lot of perhaps if you're playing like a radar cruiser as an example, is you can't always afford to sit in a position for a long time, particularly when you begin to talk about tier 10 CVs and super CVs. You know, you have like a Nakumov with skip bombers or rockets coming in on your side and get 20k'd. Hakuyu dropping you with armor-piercing dive bombs, or Richtofen hitting you with the armor-piercing dive bombs. So it can be really bad experience, and because we don't have something quite like that, I go ahead and decide to make the decision where I'm going to go up here and sit on B, because I'm not too worried about Yorktown, I'm not too concerned about Kearsarge right now. For now, we're just going to move up here, and I've got some support that's going to be coming to help me out here as well. So since there's a less spotting in terms of destroyers, I feel like I can probably make my presence known here at the Bravo cap. So this is one of the things, as a cruiser player, as I've just said previously, you tend to want to work around key objectives. And when you're working around key objectives, you also are, the other mindset is you're helping to support your destroyer players. You don't want to leave your destroyer players high and dry. You want to be somewhat close by to provide assistance, but here we can kind of play on our own, so to speak, because we don't have a destroyer here at B that we're covering. Of course, we also have, in addition to the hybrid, in addition to the CV, we have the airstrikes. So rather than reversing, I decide sometimes you can juke them and psych them out and going forward, which we do there. Yarsveld, from him, he pins 34mm, but with our improved armor penetration angles, we can actually Citadel the Yarsveld, as you already saw. We got 1 Citadel. I think this level is like a 2 Citadel. So he's not getting the hint that he needs to go bow in. So we can kind of have this commanding presence here in Bravo. Yarsveld played it bad. He should have pushed right up on an objective like that. So he's going to go down to Torpedo, and then we're going to be switching off over here to the Montana, who's also making way early of a push. Part of the cruiser life in World of Warships is that typically, I mean, regardless of class, you will have certain players on an enemy team, even your own team, who get a little overzealous, push in, and die early. Like you see our dead destroyer that died a little bit ago in C. He's on even the opposite side of the island into the enemy's spawn, half of the cap. He got overzealous. He died early, right? So that sucks because we've lost our only destroyer in this game, which increases the value of you being a destroyer player and staying alive, but I digress. So when you're playing cruisers in World of Warships, you typically always want to do what you can to find cover, particularly working around islands. You want to isolate one-on-one engagements. That's especially true for any class in the game, but I would say definitely for cruiser players. Part of the challenge of cruisers in World of Warships these days is there's so much overmatch in the game, right? So you have Montana's 406s, and he can get some heavy damage on us through our bow. And because, as we talked about in the Veteran Player Guide series, knowing the value of knowing your ship with our 203 high explosive on Salem and Des Moines, we pin 34mm and Montana has a 32mm bow. So we can just keep shooting that and not over present ourselves. So sometimes you're trying to find a way, in spotting in the game, you only get spotted, so to speak, if you're peeking out from behind an island, only if the middle section, the center point of your ship, is uncovered. Sometimes you can just stick your bow out with your main battery guns and be shooting an enemy target and not even be seen, provided how enemy ships are positioned and, of course, CVs, this, that, and the other. So really, for example, with like the Salem Des Moines, and other cruisers, we can talk about Tulsa, we could even talk about Buffalo, Rochester, Pensacola, those type of cruisers. You want to be able to find these type of positions where you can utilize island to your cover. That's especially true for the light cruisers in the game, like Jacksonville, Seattle, so on and so forth. So it's finding those positions as well where you can get crossfire set up. So we've taken control of the middle of the map, and here we can exert our fluence. Do we want to shoot C cap? Do we want to shoot A cap? The choice really is ours. So I'm looking at the mini map and I'm deciding where am I needed. So it feels like I'm needed more towards A. So we're going to work our way that way because there's a lot of battleships that are sitting on the backside of A. And we want to do so consciously. There are going to be times when you're repositioning, and just because you can see an enemy ship and they're within gun range and you're out in the open doesn't mean you necessarily want to open up with your main battery gun. Sometimes you want to use your concealment to get in a little bit closer. Now, of course, that's a little more difficult. Perhaps there's something you start talking about a Moskva or a Stalingrad, right? But we can get away with that type of thing here with Salem and moving more into towards A. Now, one of the challenges the enemy team has left the door kind of wide open in the sense they don't have a central battleship positioned. All their battleships on either flank. So yeah, I shouldn't really be able to get away with what I'm getting away with right now, but we're able to because they don't have anyone in the mid except their CV who's now flying in to spot us. And by the time he's come in to spot us, we are able to get back in behind this island. So actually multiple of the enemy battleships are going to take shots at us, but we're diving the island. A lot of the cruiser life sometimes can be summed up as island hopping, if you will, where you're hopping from cover to cover. In this type of game, you make it more frustrating for a CV to drop you sometimes somewhat accurately if he's having to fly right in over the island, or he's trying to line up a torpedo strike or an attack rocket strike. You can be difficult for submarines to deal with, which is kind of one of the reasons why I want to show this video, because we get a lot of aircraft action and we get some submarine action later on into the game, as well as you see us working the capture zones, we're working the objectives. So I'm not locking onto Alaska here yet. He counter radars me, fine, but I don't want Alaska to get spooked and then go forward just because someone's aiming at him. So we've locked down, of course, now, and burp, we get the kill before he even gets a strike off here. The other issue we're going to have with enemy Yorktown is he's going to keep spotting us. He won't always come in for attack. He'll spot us for a bit before striking. Corsair pretty much always tries to go in for the strike as soon as he can because he wants to get his 12 406s off, right? Party target is also really valuable in general among your cruisers. There's some like Moskva and Stalingrad. I just take incoming fire alert, and there are other cruisers too. I take incoming fire alert over party target. But kind of one of the fun things with the Salem Des Moines is they tend to put out a lot of DPM quite fast. So I can see them, 3 ships are aiming at me, to 2 detected, and that's because the center of my ship is peeked out here against the Kearsarge. But we have a high DPM, so I kind of like taking the priority target over incoming fire alert. You could take an incoming fire alert, of course, but something like Moskva, Stalingrad, like Petropavlovsk is a little more tanky, so you don't have to be as concerned, so to speak, when you're playing something like Salem or Des Moines or Cerberus, other cruisers in the game. So the CV spotting us. Otherwise, if the CV wasn't spotting us, we would be able to shoot this Kearsarge without being detected at all right now. So what we've done here, one of the influences that cruisers have, generally speaking, in the game, something like even like the Henri, Jacksonville, Kandy, Worcester, Smolensk, cruisers that have a high rate of DPM and they set a lot of fires, you tend to push the enemy team back. They don't like to be shot at, especially the battleships. They're not always willing to trade their hit points, which is part of one of the key values of being a battleship, that you tank for your team. You take some damage. That's why you have so many hit points. But once you put a lot of fire on them, you can kind of see on the mini-map, right? You're looking at my 15.8 kilometer range, and the battleships right now, they're pretty much just staying outside of my main battery gun range, which has pushed them further away from the key objective areas, allowing our team to more or less control the caps, except C. We're losing the C cap now. And our team's trying to flip A, and they're going to have a really difficult time in flipping A. I'm going to be sitting here for a little bit, and that's partly because as soon as I move out in the open, I mean, there's multiple battleships that would love to shoot me as soon as I come out. So I'm trying to weigh my cards here. I'm also having to pay attention to crossfires. There's a battleship I think that was moving over on G7 close to the sea cap. So I want to make sure I'm trying to hug the island. I feel like now's the point where I can break out away from the island. It'll be a little bit, I think, before I get spotted by a CV again. Maybe I've got 15 seconds or something like that. So I feel like I can go ahead and move. We've pushed the enemy team so far back again that they are not able to spot us to prevent us from moving out like this and flipping the cap. And they've really been relying on their Yorktown and their Kearsarge spotting us. And the next thing we're going to do here is we haven't used a heal yet this game. So I'm actually going to go ahead and preemptively heal so I can get my next repair party back sooner. I like Salem over Des Moines in the certain sense that you can take more punishment in Salem because you have the specialized repair teams versus Des Moines, kind of like a standard heal for a cruiser, if you will. So that's one of the reasons why I have a lot more battles with Salem than Des Moines, as an example. And of course, there are some trade-offs in addition to that, getting that specialized repair team. My teammates have continued to get shot. They're leaving the cap, which we were really 10 seconds away, I think, from spotting. And unfortunately, we're not going to be able to cap now because now we're getting shot at, and I'm not really open to entertaining being shot by Thunders 457s. Whether it's high explosive armor piercing, we can take a lot of damage there. And I don't think the submarine has even been spotted yet on the mini-map at this point, which is interesting to say the least. I'm wanting to move in towards the center island here at A to secure the cap. One of the downsides of losing your destroyer, and we've lost our submarine player as well, is that it's kind of more pressure on the cruisers, as an example, to cap. And I say cruisers because I'm trying to reference that we have a greater concealment, right? So then it kind of comes down to us to try to get in here and secure the cap for our team. You can see Yorktown's kind of flying in, he's flying out. He's just really keeping us spotted and really delaying us from getting the cap. So he probably has a decent amount of spotting damage, I would guess. So that's good for him. We are going to go ahead and open up. We want to see if we can't finish off the Mecklenburg because, now we finally have something in main battery gun range again. And there's some torpedoes. I don't remember if actually Mecklenburg dies to the torps. Well, Thunder or Schlieffen dies to Thunder, Schlieffen kills Mecklenburg. So those were Mecklenburg torpedoes. So we're still being spotted, but we're getting the island down behind us. So we've essentially moved the enemy battleships and cruisers from being back here behind A cap. Now they're over to B cap. They're kind of just following they're following each other around, certainly. But we're kind of playing off of that. because when the enemy team isn't present, right, it's more easier for us to do what we want to do. And I realized I'm trying to reverse now because of, again, the plane spotting. It's we got reset a lot of times ultimately on this cap. Typically, you know, if you have some more destroyers or competent destroyer players, there won't be as much pressure for you to cap, but when they kind of fall apart, they die early and yellowing and this, that, and the other, then there certainly is a pressure to go ahead and get on the cap, right? One enemy battleship has stayed back in the spawn. And then you see we get hit by the submarine with a ping. Don't know where exactly it is. We do have our damage control party ready. We don't have a hydro. Des Moines gets both the radar and the hydro. And we've been reversing. We're going to DCP, and we're going to simply accelerate forward. So he won't be able to ping us again to get the torps locked on in time for the torpedoes to actually home in on us. So we're going to scoot forward back a little bit again, but we're going to have to be conscious because enemy team players are moving more back up into the middle of the map. So we're really just trying to cap, right? How much time have we already spent trying to pick up this cap? Funny as it is, and we're finally now going to be able to pick it up. The Kearsarge in New Yorktown have not liked us at all doing what we do. So I did reference a little bit earlier, and I needed to spend maybe a tiny bit more time on it. Overmatching the game is rough for cruisers these days, so you really need smoke. You need to rely on concealment. You need to rely on islands. When I first started playing World of Warships over 5 years ago, the overmatch wasn't that bad in the game. You know, I think even Wargaming said they would put anything bigger than the 460s in the game. Lol, you know, I think now there's what 483s, and then there's the 510mm guns. So the life of a cruiser player has certainly become harder. Then you throw submarines in that can spot you, but you can't spot them even when you pop your radar and they're within your radar range. You have more hybrid ships in the game as well, switching between, you know, their planes to immediately after they're launching their attack to their main battery guns. You have Dutch cruisers dropping airstrikes on you. So the life of a cruiser player is certainly more challenging than it was 5 years ago compared to what it is today. But cruisers, in my opinion, still can certainly be the king of, you know, your damage per minute and getting a lot of raw damage. And particularly cruisers have the most influence over any game. Again, probably depends on the player. And the last half of the battle, right? So there's 2 cruisers left in this game, me, myself, and I don't remember what the other cruiser is off the top of my head right now. But you are a big threat. Yeah, it was a Yarsfeld who just died to the GK because Yarsfeld does not have any armor whatsoever. Trust me, I know, I've been playing it. So then now we're the last cruiser, right? It's 3 versus 4. But now I can choose to be aggressive because the Kearsarge has decided, oh, I'm going to push it now. But he doesn't really have the support at the moment unless his teammates lob shells over the island. We can go ahead and get rid of him. Because what I want to do, well, Montana takes out the Kearsarge finally. Because what I want to do is then shift my attention back towards the center of the map. What's really bad for cruisers also in terms of the overmatch is you really have to have the map awareness, which in a couple of videos in the future I'll talk more extensively about. Because of the crossfires and typically with the high tier, you know, you have ships that can reach out, you know, 21, 25, 30 kilometers away and smack you if you're kind of sitting somewhat stationary, as an example. So that's part of the life that most cruisers have difficulties with as well. For players who are looking for cross-map shots to catch cruisers off guard, that's one of the things that's really fun to do in a battleship if you have accurate main battery guns, and then of course you also have the range. So I'm going to say I need intelligence data, and then we're going to dive behind the island. There's no need for me to be sitting out here in the open, taking a lot of damage from Salem, as the Yorktown, of course, also, you know, that class line gets smoke screens as well. We have a submarine behind us. Oh my gosh, well, you know, what's going on here? Things are not looking good, so to speak, but we're going to use this island again to our advantage. You know, Moskva is 12 kilometer. So between the 12 kilometer radar and Moskva, Yorktown spotting us. with planes, submarines spotting us. You know, life's rough, so to speak, right now for us as a cruiser player. But the game is soon going to be ending. We don't have to worry about keeping the Moscow from capping B because we have the points lead by over 300 points. If I'm doing math right off the top of my head. Yorktown's just, again, he just keeps spotting us, but it's like, hey, you kind of need to come in and attack me sooner. And I reversed out, and I'm going to accelerate again because I want to bait the submarine's torpedoes if he fires some without homing in on us in general. And he did, and we just kind of baited his torps, and we take cover again. Life of a cruiser player in World of Warships 2025, right? Pretty painful, all things considered, between the CV, the hybrid. We took only a tiny bit of damage from the Dutch airstrike, having to be mindful of submarines, and then, you know, the spotting, which I hope Wargaming addresses somewhat in the near future. But we did really well this game. The plane kills definitely bumped our base XP over 2,300. You know, we're working on all those things between the caps, the kills, the damage. If you get any defended ribbons, plane kills, spotting, all those things are going to help raise your base XP. We took 72,000 damage, 1.5 million potential damage, and there you can see a lot of the planes we shot down. There's definitely a lot of fighters mixed into that, and also you see the Dutch, the airstrike planes with 156,000 damage spotted or done and dealt, shared out almost evenly between our high explosive and armor piercing. And then here it looks like with premium account, we netted over 1.1 million credits with a blue booster. So I actually really like playing cruisers in World of Warships. I didn't in the beginning. I was more of a battleship than a destroyer, then have become more invested in cruisers as time has gone on. Because I find it somewhat challenging, but also really rewarding to play cruisers. If you're newer to the game, then ideally you should first start off with battleships. And then I think then also be playing destroyers and then get a feel for cruisers. But typically if you wrestle with being a somewhat average player in the game, then it's recommended that spend more time in battleships because it's harder to kill battleships, right? Because of the hit points, your armor scheme, this, that, and the other. So this is a battle thought process with Salem and just talking more about cruisers in general. You know, there are long-range cruisers, of course. You have some brawling cruisers like the Aegir and others as well. But I really like to think cruisers are ones that, one, they support their destroyers. Secondly, they also work key objectives like capture points or maybe key points on flanks, so to speak. And when you kind of have that recipe going for you, then you can actually have a lot of successful games, especially if you live the last half of the battle in a cruiser, as long as you're mindful of the overmatch in the game and, you know, what can just absolutely wreck and smash you in your concealment and maneuvering around on the map. So I hope this battle thought process with Cruiser Edition has been good. I'll do a battleship one next week, talking about battleships in general. I'll probably be playing a battleship that's an average battleship in terms of its capabilities. You know, nothing that's like to either end of the far pendulum in terms of, oh, this is a hardcore brawling battleship or this is a hardcore sniping battleship, because most battleships are maybe average in the game in terms of being more mid-range battleships. So that being said, if you liked today's video, give a thumbs up. If you didn't, give a thumbs down. Subscribe if you do want to see more. If you subscribe, thanks so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you to my Patreon supporters. Until next time, take care.